We all have a they couldn't punish us all story. But what's your they punished us all story? Went to boarding school. Someone accidentally hit the power on their stereo in the middle of the night. When the prefect went to investigate, someone on the opposite end of the house blasted their stereo for shoots and giggles. Since nobody fessed up, the whole house was thrown out of bed and had to do wall sits. For like ever. Nobody ever did fess up. For like ever. Some say they're still doing wall sits to this day. Someone allegedly graffitied an antique desk in one of the company bays in basic training when I was at Fort Benning back in 2010. DS's pulled the entire company on a Saturday morning about an hour before we're scheduled to hit the range for a live fire. One of the few times we're kind of happy to train. We're all in this freaking rock pit, on our hands and knees bear crawling back and forth waiting for the culprit to admit. We got our asses smoked for 2 hours. I tried to confess to one of the black drill sergeants and I'll never forget his response. Your black butt volunteered to join the army. That's the last time I ever better hear of you volunteering ever again. You're not taking this punishment for that butthole. We know who did it already. I know you ain't do this. But so you know, one of the buses broke down and we ain't got crap fuel to do. So this is it. So get the frick down and crawl, bro. Did a group project with like 10 people. One girl didn't go to any of the meetings and didn't do any of the work. We all agreed it wasn't fair, so we talked to our teacher about it and she dropped part of all of our grades for lack of communication. I worked for a Ford supplier years ago that did metal stamping and welding. Entire weld department stopped working and went to the break room wanting a meeting with the plant manager over treatment and working conditions. I didn't work in that department, but I heard the plant manager walked in and counted all the people. Only thing he said was, you have 30 seconds to get back to work or all 32 of you are fired. He then walked out. The turnover rate was insane. You all need unions. In 7th grade, we had just had an easy Spanish quiz that was supposed to be added onto our test grades. To help boost them, people were talking after the quiz, and the teacher threatened to rip the quizzes in half and just drop them, and the kids who were talking just didn't stop. True to his word, he straightened the stack of papers, and tore the whole stack clean in half, and threw it in the garbage. It definitely got the class quiet, that's for sure. Oh, crap. I went to a small Catholic elementary school in the 80s. Some 8th grade girls showed up to school wearing jewelry that was prohibited by the dress code, earrings that were too big, or something. The nun principal got very upset and proceeded to confiscate every piece of jewelry from every student in the school. When they told us this, I was somewhere between 2nd and 4th grade. I distinctly remember my first thought was they won't take away religious jewelry too. Sure enough, they did. My great aunt had given me a gold crucifix pendant and chain for first penance. She passed away less than a year later. I was very attached to it. I still wear it despite being mostly agnostic these days. So, when our teacher handed out paper envelopes and told everyone to put their jewelry in there with their name and grade on the outside, I was very upset. Upset enough that the main office called my mom because I wouldn't stop crying. They gave us no indication of if or when we'd be getting our stuff back. When she found out why I was so upset, she chewed out the principal for mass seizing valuables from students. All I know is I got my cross back by the end of the day. I had a teacher who came in one day positively irate about bags of candy she just bought that went missing. She was convinced someone in the class had stolen them. When no one fessed up, she proceeded to keep us all inside for recess until someone confessed. About a month later, a student was looking for some supplies and opened a cabinet in the back. What did he find? The missing bags of candy. So really she punished all of us for forgetting where she put the candy. Never apologized either. TLDR. Teacher lost candy, blamed the whole class and didn't apologize. That teacher should really stop drinking on the job. When I was a 15-year-old boy at summer camp, 3 guys decided it would be a fun idea to spray insect repellent on the floor and light it on fire inside a wooden cabin in the middle of the forest. They were having fun watching the fire burn, but then one kid walked in and was obviously shocked to see a fire burning on the floor. He did what any sane person would do and used a fire extinguisher to put it out. However, using the fire extinguisher meant we had to get a new one to replace it, which meant we had to tell the counselors. which means the kids who started the fire would likely get in trouble. Needless to say, they were angry at the kid for trying to save their lives, but more on that later. Fearing the fate of being kicked out of camp, the boys who started the fire were able to manipulate 12 others into accepting the blame for it. Of course, their logic was, they can't kick us all out. Be a bro, take one for the team. It appeared as though their plan had worked. The camp directors decided they wouldn't kick out all 15 of the boys, but they had to face some other kind of punishment. They were banned from the final banquet. Only a few nights later, the closer it got to the big evening, the more rattled they got about missing the final big activity of the summer, the special dinner, the jokes, the awards, the slideshow, all the future memories that the staff put together for this night. So when it finally got there and they weren't allowed in, they were pee. And in their minds, whose fault was it? The original 3 for starting the fire, theirs for being foolish enough to take the blame for something they didn't do. Nah, it was the boy who used the fire extinguisher. So while everyone else was out having fun, they needed to get back at him by masturbating onto his pillow all at once. And that's where the counselors walked in. That night, on the last night of camp, they called the parents of all 15 boys and informed them that their children were all on a bus on their way back to the city, and why they were kicked out. If that were me, I still wouldn't be able to look at my parents the same way 10 years later. That took a gay twist. In high school, we had a thing called sweeps, where if you were late to school, even by just a few minutes, you had to spend the rest of the hour in the sweeps room. You couldn't talk, only read or do homework. Towards the end of the year, a ton of seniors decided for their prank, they would go to sweeps. I think 40-50 kids went. You could see them all leaving at the end of the hour because it was Spirit Week and all the seniors were wearing green. Everyone thought they wouldn't punish that many kids, but boy were they wrong. Every single one got detention, and the VP and principal threatened not letting them walk at graduation, which was kind of a big deal considering 50 kids was probably 1/3 of the graduating class. They ended up letting the kids walk, but the message was clear that if anyone ever tried to pull a stunt like that again, the repercussions would be worse. Then they got rid of sweeps the next year. My school never had something like that. I would have freaking loved a silent homeroom to just get some homework done. Back in high school, our marching band used to march at the parade in Disneyland once a year and then spend the rest of the day there. During my senior year, we were told to meet up at the buses by like 10 PM or so. Turns out we were supposed to meet back an hour earlier, but nobody got the memo. So our band director issued detentions for everyone in the band. Worth it. My grade 4 teacher gave the entire class detention because we named our dodgeball team Team John Cena. My grade 8 teacher gave the entire class detention after 18 of the 22 kids admitted to misbehaving in French class. When I was in grade 2, every kid on one of the buses were banned from riding the bus. Not sure why though. My grade 4 teacher gave the entire class detention because we named our dodgeball team Team John Cena. Well, yeah, when you name your team a swear word to the IWC, of course that happens. At boarding school, they found the wrappers of 3 bags of chocolate chips that had been stolen from the kitchen. The whole school didn't get dessert for 2 months. Last month, almost 3 years later, someone finally admitted it was her. I was teased in 5th grade with the Flutterpy touch. Essentially, think of me as a virus. You touch me and you wipe your hand on another kid who screams Flutterpy touch and loses their freaking crap, and then wipes their hand on another kid, and so on. The 5th grade teacher ended up giving everybody, excluding myself, extra homework. That backfired. I didn't have any friends in 5th grade for the rest of the year. Dang it, Ms. C. At least you tried. Cheese touch. One person was routinely late from break at work, so they made everyone leave 2 minutes late and come back 2 minutes early. Doesn't sound bad, but the breaks were 15 minutes and we all walked out to the smoking area, which was already a 2-minute walk one way. The whole department took breaks at the same time. I worked for an unloading team at Walmart a few years back where they did this exact thing to the whole team. They even made us check in with supervisors when leaving and coming back to ensure we weren't late. Had a boss at a pizzeria who made every employee pay the amount the register was short by. Only the person who took the money was unaffected. It quickly stopped disappearing. Illegal. This story isn't mine but was told to me by my dad. At the Naval Academy in the late 60s, pep rallies for football games were banned by the new commandant. The midshipmen had a spontaneous pep rally anyway, with the general attitude being they can't fry us all. The next day the commandant called the entire brigade of midshipmen into alumni hall and announced that every single person was on restriction until further notice. He actually fried them all. In 7th grade history, the entire class was given permission slips for a voluntary weekend field trip with a strict deadline, regardless of field trip attendance, to return the slips. Most of the class forgot to bring them in, so some 20 of us had to come in for a breakfast detention the next week. It was actually pretty alright. The teacher brought in tang and muffins for us. It's odd to see such a huge number of stories stemming from either grade school or the army. Is there a comparison to be made? Oh, you have no idea. The military is basically a heavily armed preschool with alcohol. When I was in basic training and featuring Benning, someone left their wall locker unlocked at night after we had just been punished for that earlier in the day. Well, to get the point across, this time they woke all of up in the middle of the night and had us take all of our stuff and completely remake the barracks on the sandpit outside. Here's the deal though. Our barracks was on the 3rd floor and all the beds were metal bunk beds and the wall lockers are freaking huge. Took us all night to redo the barracks and all morning to bring it all back up to the 3rd floor. We didn't sleep that night. So at our school, the biggest in the country, on the last day of school for the final year, it was traditional for many students to have a champagne breakfast, come to school for a final assembly, to say goodbye to the teachers and collect any gear. Then head girl and boy and the prefects had an informal prisa-jiving for the student. Except my year, about half the students went a bit overboard for the champagne breakfast. Bear in mind, the drinking age is 18 here, so most of them were legal, but they turned up at school obviously drunk. At the assembly we got a sound telling off and told to leave the grounds. The prisa-jiving was cancelled. No one would be allowed to go and say goodbye to the teachers or anything. Just leave. We went down in history as the only 7th form year to unceremoniously get kicked out of school en masse. We ended up having the prisa-jiving in the car park at the local McDonald's LOL. Many years ago when I worked for an electronics company, the management claimed they couldn't afford to give everyone a promised pay rise, so we all decided to work to rule. This meant not working overtime. After a week of this, the management decided that they would after all give a pay rise. Just after this was announcement, they sacked 10% of the workforce. Everybody on our school bus was flipping off the people from the other school bus. They reported us and we all got afternoon detention. Snitches. I thought it was the law to flip off other buses while sitting on a school bus. Basic training. A female recruit wrote how she wanted to bang a male drill sergeant in her training book, and the book was found by another DS. All the females were treated to the White House that day. The White House was a shredded tire pit that was covered, where we low crawled back and forth for a very long time. I forget why the school was P, but basically if you had more than like 8 detentions you couldn't go on the yearly field trip. This was in 8th grade. I went to a small Catholic school. The teachers had it out for the boys in my class. So as the field trip is approaching, they are throwing detentions out like crazy, even for the good kids who never get in trouble, but only for the boys in the class. By the week of the field trip, every boy in the class couldn't go. Now the parents knew the school had issues, so my mom said that anyone who can't go on the field trip can skip school and just come to my house and hang out for the day. The teachers caught wind of that and gave every boy detention the day of the field trip so they couldn't skip school. So they punished all of us. But the parents were like, frick that, and we just skipped school. School shut down a few years later as most parents pulled their kids out for another school. Was in a study abroad program that had a strict curfew. It was around when a soccer World Cup was going on, and my team was having a game ending after the curfew. Decided the whole program studying abroad was gonna watch it at a public screening because they couldn't punish us all. Came back to a very angry program manager and even more strict curfews. This was during my last year in the Air Force. From what I heard, 2 or 3 people in my squadron were caught smoking weed. The response from the higher ups was to raid our dorms, put all of us in the day room we had for several hours while they ransacked everyone's rooms looking for weed, drugs, and basically anything they didn't like. They went as far as taking some people's pee magazines and for me took a airsoft gun I had that wasn't functional, combat knife that I bought on base and even down to taking the bokken, wooden training sword, I had. I was eventually able to get them back, but the entire thing was stupid and a big waste of time. Really made it easy to decide that I wasn't re-enlisting. My dad said in middle school they weren't allowed to wear white socks with black shoes. One day everyone wore this. They suspended them all. 1950s. It was a general chemistry lab. Someone made this huge mess. No one took the fall. We all got -10% on the following lab report. We were doing a minute multiplication quiz in 7th grade, and one kid kept going and the teacher got P. She sent everyone's parents an email that we were cheating, which ended up in me getting grounded for a month. All the boys at a summer camp I went to got lectured over 3 people mistreating wildlife. They rated all of us as if we'd all taken part, even though they knew dang well exactly who had done it. Years ago we had this small dog that loved gogurts. It was absurd how much he enjoyed these things. We had them in the house all the time because there were 5 kids, but we were only allowed to have them in our school lunches. The dog would get them only when we didn't eat them and we snuck him the treat when our parents weren't home. So one day, I'm helping my mother clean out the refrigerator so food is everywhere. This is important later. My parents get home from work one day and calls all 5 of us kids into the family room. We sit down on the sofa and my dad, all serious, asks what happened to all the gogurts. We had no idea what he was talking about. Apparently the nearly full box of gogurts had suddenly disappeared. None of us kids had any idea what happened to them. My parents demanded the thief to fess up and we all pled our innocence. My dad, frustrated with his lying children, said, "Who took them then?" "Max, the dog." Maybe we said, because we had just as much idea as they did. In the end my parents decided that if no one would fess up, we were all grounded. Months later, my sister and I were in our backyard cleaning up toys and whatnot so my dad could mow the lawn. I was down on my hands and knees by the deck picking up stuff when something under the deck caught my eye. I told my sister to get a flashlight so I could see better. She goes and gets one and while she's gone I reach under the deck to try and grab what caught me eye but it was just out of reach. She comes back and I use it to get a better view. It was a gogurt wrapper that I saw and with the flashlight I could see a bunch of teeth marks and a whole bunch more wrappers. Our dog had stolen the gogurts while my mother and I had cleaned the fridge. TLDR. Dog stole gogurts and me and my siblings got grounded for it. Grand total of about 5 people were being disruptive in English class. Whole English class got detention after school for up to 10 minutes. In 4th grade, the whole grade had recess together. A popular punishment was to have kids miss part or all of recess and have to watch everyone else having fun. One day I guess my class got in trouble while I was in the bathroom or tutoring or something, because when we went to recess I was the only one on the playground for the first 5 minutes. Then my class got to play, but the other classes had lost half or all of recess so we had the playground all to ourselves. But that first 5 minutes, when it was just me out there, that was strange. Like being in an abandoned town in a horror movie. My 8th grade class took a week-long trip to Washington, D.C., and we stayed in a brand new hotel. Brand new like we were the first to stay in the rooms we had kind of new. The phones in the rooms had never been used so we were the chosen few to help them kick out the links in the system. Cut to around 10 PM. We're all in our rooms and my friends and I are hanging out and there's a pounding on our door. Boom boom boom, we quickly shut off all the lights and get in bed. Because, obviously, whoever was knocking could tell. No one wanted to go answer the door but my friends were whispering for me to go answer it. I said if it's important they'll knock again. Boom boom boom, I got up to go answer the door and put on my best I've definitely been asleep for a couple hours face. The school dean, who was a chaperone on the trip, was standing in front of me and says he needs to take the phone in our room. Apparently, earlier in the night one of my classmates was trying to call home to tell her parents to tell her she was back in the hotel room safe. To make a phone call you had to press 9. To dial out of the building, press 1. See where I'm going? To dial out of the state, press 1 again. Some girl trying to call her parents kept calling 911 and hanging up when an operator answered instead of her parents. Police call the hotel, who get in touch with the dean, and since no one confesses to making the calls, all the phones had to be taken from the girls' rooms. Taking the phones away wasn't the punishment because most of us had our own phones. But seeing the dean, an always grumpy man in his late 50s, come into our rooms at 10 PM in his boxers was punishment for all of us. The good news is they found one of the problems in their phone system. When I was in high school band, we traveled on 3 separate buses. 2 were the band kids and the third was the color guard kids that helped the band. Band-aids, as we called them. The 2 band buses had directors' parents on them, so quiet shenanigans happened at the back of the bus undisturbed. The third bus, the color guard bus, somehow managed to lack chaperones that could not help but fall asleep. They were a bunch of easily influenced teenage girls without a chaperone on a 3-hour trip one way. A couple of them decided it'd be super cool to start mooning the cars behind their bus, which happened to be parents attending the football games. Parents of band kids, dance kids, football kids, teachers, lots of them, mooned, from all angles, by teenage girls. The band director was a strict disciplinarian and wanted to know who had the idea in the first place, but nobody admitted, even though it was very obviously the captain. Since nobody confessed, ratted her out. The entire band had to run laps for 15 minutes at 4 PM before our 4-7 PM practice, when they had just cut the grass. The color guard had to run 30 minutes though, so I guess he spared a little mercy. That sounds like a very mild punishment for what would now be an OS offense. For the girls that did it anyway. Was in college living in a dorm. There were 5 restrooms, and 2 of the men's restrooms kept getting vandalized. Someone was purposely clogging the toilets with paper towels. The floors got flooded. After a few warnings with no effect, they charged the whole building, something small like $5 a person. But the vandalism didn't stop, so they just took away the paper towels. There weren't hand dryers or anything. The number of people who I witnessed just not washing their hands because of it was disgusting. Later on, someone took a dump in the boys' shower. Our lads were a real handful that year. An entire English class plagiarized, freaking copy and pasted Wikipedia pages, a paper, and thought the teacher would let the grade slide or give everyone a B or C. Nope. The teacher reported all of them, gave them perfect zeros, and took the heat from all of the parents doing the "muck kid did no wrong" spiel. A lot of these stories have had me pee at how petty teachers and administrators can be, but this one, 100% behind the teacher here. In elementary school there was this yearly program to encourage kids to spend more time reading, being read to. You had to read with your parents and log the hours and book on a sheet that was signed by them. The more you read, the more your hot air balloon traveled. If everyone in your class hot air balloon reached the end, the whole class got a pizza party. Yeah, I was that kid. I've always enjoyed reading, but my mom just didn't have the patience care to sit and watch me read. I think my brother and I managed to convince our mom to start lying when I was in 3rd or 4th grade because we were so desperate to not be the reason for no pizza party again. That's actually really sad. I'm glad you at least got her to sign off on it, especially since you loved reading. Not me, but my college roommate. He'd once parked too close to an elementary school. A friend of mine came by and said that he got a ticket. The roommate responded, "But there were a whole bunch of other cars parked there." The friend replied, "They all got tickets." Not much of a response you can give after that. D. Yup, that happened to me and my wife once. Big, wide road by a beach. Dozens of cars parked along it. One single, rusty no parking sign in the middle of it all. Every single car got a ticket. And next weekend when we went there again and parked in the right place, every car on that stretch had a ticket on its windshield. That cop must have the best numbers in the whole city. We had 5 officers at my detention center get fired for going to the sergeant and telling him that he could fire their shift supervisor, but in their words, you can't fire 5 of the 7 officers that make up the shift. Those 5 officers didn't like their supervisor because he didn't take their crap and made them do things they didn't want to do, like come to work. Sergeant asked them if they all felt that way and they said they did. He said, "Okay, give me your badges and ID cards now, you are all terminated immediately." The look on their faces as they were escorted from the building was priceless. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.